High vibes, guys.
It's me, RiZing.
And Heat.
In today's video, we're going to be talking about and also watching moving along the stages of consciousness.
Yeah, we're gonna pretty much just discuss with you guys, be like, okay, this is what's going on in this video and how it could pretty much help you right now. So, without further ado, let's get started into the video.
Oh yeah. It's like,
Hey, what's up everybody? It's your boy Astro Solsin from ReprogramTheMatrix.com. Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing information on moving through the different stages of consciousness and how it takes time to move through those different stages and how there's different adversity and obstacles on each one of those stages. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying the channel, make sure to leave a like. Also, if you're new to the channel, subscribe and click the little notification bell so that you don't miss any future updates. So as you're moving along on your spiritual journey, your spiritual awakening path, you have to go through these different stages of consciousness. It's just like when you're a child and you grow up and you go through the different stages. Like, okay, for example, you start off as an infant, a toddler or whatever. Then eventually you become a child. Then eventually you become, a teenager. Then eventually you become a young adult. Then you become an adult. Then you become, I don't know after that, I guess you become the elderly. I don't know. Do we have like different stages? All right, forget it, whatever. But yeah, so essentially, as you grow, you go through these different stages, and the simulation, it forces you to go through those stages as a human. But then as a spiritual being, when it comes to your spirit, there's different stages of consciousness that you have to go through. And a lot of what you hear about here on YouTube when it comes to spirituality, a lot of it is going to be kind of at the beginning stages. It's kind of like you're dabbling in it a bit, but you haven't really gone all in. You haven't put in 100% yet to your spiritual goals. So a lot of what you hear about isn't going to take you deeper and further. I did that video on how deep does the rabbit hole go. I'll have a link up here for anybody that hasn't watched that yet. But how deep does a rabbit hole go? It goes really deep, and you have to be prepared for it, because as you start to get into your spirituality more and more and more, your awareness is going to expand, your consciousness is going to expand, and you're going to seek out things that the average person isn't really seeking out. This is why once you start awakening to some of this higher level spiritual information, if you go try to share it with the average Joe out there, they're probably not going to be willing to listen to what you're talking about, because they haven't pondered upon some of the questions that you pondered on. They haven't went down, these different, I guess you could say these different trails or trials that.
All right, so we paused it right there. He definitely gave a lot of information. One thing I wanted to point out was talking about like moving along like reality, and he's talking about like you start as a kid, you become a teenager, an adult, and so on and so forth. And a lot of the times, like people, they're either like staying stagnant, they're not growing, or they're actually growing within themselves, and they're trying to like see growth and trying to like get to that next level. But a lot of the times, like when reality is going by, for example, right now we're going into fall, right? So fall, you're going to be pushed into some sort of direction, whether you're actually trying to move with it or not, because it's a new energy. Just because you might not be able to pick up on the energy doesn't mean the energy is not there. Like, you're going to see changes within yourself. You might not notice the changes, but they're going to be happening.
very true. And with that being said too, like as these changes, come along on your spiritual path, whether if you are just beginning, maybe you're just like a spiritual infant, or like you're been along on your spiritual, path and everything like that. A good thing to realize is that like each part of those stages, there's a lot of valuable lessons to learn when you're going through, the beginning stage, maybe more the intermediate, or like just whatever the case may be. Like all those things are very valuable, because some people, they get deterred because they see people that are maybe like further along on their spiritual path. So it's important to also ground and balance yourself as you move along the stages of consciousness as well, because that'll help you maintaining that vibration as you go throughout the season, especially during this fall time and everything like that as well.
I just wanted to mention one more thing. So if you're having like trouble, like actually you're starting to grow and like the growth isn't happening, you get pulled into like certain friendships, certain relationships. We have a community, Reprogram the Matrix. This is what we're doing. We're raising in the stages of consciousness, but not alone. Like you see us together, we're doing the video, and we're actually coming together to help each other, especially through like these different transitions like fall, summer, winter. All this stuff is going to be changing the way that you see things and everything else. For example, like you might one day be really happy, and then the next day like you're just super mad, you're super angry, you have no energy. This stuff can happen, and get yourself around the right people so when it does happen you can actually be like that spiritual being and be like, okay, maybe I need help, because it's not bad for other people to help you, especially during the times now. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I had to say.
Video.
Yeah, video.
That you've been going through, they haven't went through those yet, so they don't really understand that. That's why it's really like you have to talk to somebody where they're at. If somebody isn't really opened up to that spiritual information, then you probably just shouldn't even share it with them, because it's not going to really, equate to anything. But when they're ready for it, that's when you go ahead and share more. So you share with them where they're at. And a lot of people, where they're at on their spiritual path, is kind of on the basic level. They're hearing about meditation, yoga, the chakras, just all the like basic stuff, crystals, you can heal from crystals and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a stage you have to go through. But eventually you got to start going deeper. You have to start getting into these mysteries of the matrix system. And these mysteries, they can go pretty deep. That rabbit hole, it can go really deep. And if you're not prepared for it, then you probably shouldn't, dive into that hole, because it definitely is going to pretty much put an end to your current thinking, your current perception of reality, as you start to go deeper, into what we're actually experiencing, who you actually are, where are you headed towards, what is your purpose. As you start to go deeper into these things, it starts to get pretty crazy in terms of, figuring out like that you're in a simulation, for an example. Some people, they may have not come to that conclusion yet, but when they do, it's like, whoa, like this is pretty, interesting that I'm potentially really inside of this simulated world, and science has stuff to back that up. So it's not just some crazy idea, and this has been a spiritual idea for a long time, since the beginning of spirituality, which is the beginning of this reality.
So yeah, I have something to say about that. So pretty much like he's talking about like when you start raising up in these stages of consciousness, like sometimes some people might turn away from spirituality because like they're trying to open their third eye too fast. Like I'm sure if you watch Astro's videos, he talks about this all the time. People need to take steps on their spiritual path, but that's the great thing about being around people that are also on their spiritual path. There's people that might be on your vibration, there might be people that are on a higher vibration, but in the end it's just love. In the end it's either that like loving energy to where you're like really trying to motivate them, it could be that tough love. We're trying to help raise everyone up, and a lot of the times people, like if they're having trouble, you have to push them. You have to kind of give them that push to be like, hey, like turn up. We're really in this reality, and we have to like be the example for everyone else so they can turn up as well.
Yeah, because if you don't turn up, like, what do you expect to see yourself in your life in reality? Where are you gonna head? You're not gonna head anywhere. So instead of going backwards in life, you need to move forward. That's part of life, and as you move along the stages of consciousness and everything like that, that's also symbolically showing you, things change. The energy changes, so the energy within you changes too. So as you move along on your spiritual path, you got to keep that energy flowing and growing, especially with people that are like-minded and stuff like that. You can't actually, excuse me. It's like there's a reason why we have each other to be able to talk about these things, because it's good to be able to express yourself and be in a place where you can be open to, receive, that, help or criticism that you may need to in order to grow on your spiritual path. Because if I forgot what I was gonna say. It's just like, yeah, sometimes you just gotta move along.
Yep. And so let's continue the video. Let's keep turning up, and let's see what
Move
else
it along.
Astro needs to say. Yeah, let's keep moving along.
Simulation, like they would call it a dream, they would call it the Maya, they would call it an illusion, whatever. Today, because we have certain technology, we can understand the reality as a simulation. So that's why we call it a simulation instead of a dream now. You see, and then, who knows, 1,000 years from now, it won't be a simulation anymore. It'll be something else, because there'll be some better way to describe what it is that we're experiencing, while we're here in this physical realm. So as you go through stages, you start to get revealed more truth. You start to get revealed more answers to the unknown answers that you have right now. And usually it's the unknown to the masses. The masses don't go that deep into it, so it's unknown to them. Because it's deeper than just, a simulation and stuff. When we start really getting to, the deep parts of your spirituality, it's a lot deeper than just a simulation. The simulation is just kind of like the carrier of our spirit as we're evolving and growing as a spiritual being, you see. And then even here in the physical as a human being, the simulation, it carries you along through different stages. So it's like the reality is forcing you in a way to grow. It's forcing you to evolve. It's forcing you to
How about
We're like, yeah.
Yeah, so actually there's something that I would like to add on to that, like something that like even I've observed through like, my physical age that I have, even though I may not be my mind or my body, obviously I'm experiencing and everything like that. But one thing that I've like observed through like my transition of time and stuff, like it's very true what he's saying. Life does force you to change in different ways, because like even just age itself, like it causes you, as you grow older and stuff like that, basically, like how he was saying, become like an infant to, a young adult to a teenager to whatever, along those paths and everything like that. Basically, as you get older and stuff like that, if you even just observe in your reality, you can see how, even age, how it forces people to change, because you can see an older person, right, compared to a younger person, and how that age is affecting because of how the reality works and how it's shifting and stuff because of the age and the time and these cycles that we go through. It's like you can see how it's forcing them to change their reality, because now if you're older and everything like that, you may have to be more careful when you do certain things, but when you're younger, you're probably going to be more in a carefree state, because you're just, you're learning and growing along the different stages of consciousness, and you may go through certain things at those stages that later or you may be doing something when you're younger that you may not be doing when you're older, because these things change and everything like that. It just all depends on the circumstances and the energy.
And just like be grateful that like you get to experience like being a baby, being a young adult, being a old man. Like you're having all these different experiences come to you at these different ages, and you might be a young man looking at an old dude being like, hey, why is he doing that? But then when you're his age, you do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to be like mindful of like how you're treating your elders as well. And like I'm not just saying go out and just like help everyone.
Yeah.
Like although that would be cool, a lot of people first need to help themselves. So once you help yourself, you're gonna start seeing like more things that you or that keep popping up. Like you're gonna start being more grateful, you're gonna be more humble to certain things, you're gonna be appreciative of the experience you're getting within the simulation. So that's all I had to say. Be grateful, and yeah, we can get back and keep moving along the stages of consciousness.
Look at reality in different ways, because when you were 5 years old, you looked at the reality different than when you're 20 years old, right? And when you're 20 years old, you're looking at the reality different than when you're 40 years old. You see, so when you're going through these different stages of life as a human, it's also forcing you to start to look into things deeper. And some of the things that are deeper, you realize were always there at the beginning. So when you're in that childlike state and you're, playing with your toys and using your imagination, tuning into certain energies, talking to certain beings and stuff, it's like, as you get older, eventually you start tuning into that more. That's why you might have like a grandparent or, an elder, relative or something like that, a neighbor, and they start kind of sounding crazy to you, like they're talking a bunch of nonsense and it sounds all weird. These people have went through all of those human experiences, from all the way to the infant to the elderly age at that point. And there's certain things that, they don't take in anymore. They realize what some of the truth is. Of course, there's some people that don't reach their highest truth as an elder person, but sometimes there's people that they do have a lot of wisdom because they went through those stages. That's why it's important to respect your elders, because they've been through a lot. If they've made it to the age of like 80 or something, or 70 or even 60, it's like they went through a lot of stuff, so you got to pay your respect, right? And eventually you should be there as well as an elderly, and you'll be like, hey, I went through a lot, have some respect for me, right? So, and that's besides the point. I'm getting into some other stuff, but really, you have these different stages that you go through, and the reality is forcing you to go through those. So on each one of those steps, as you start to become comfortable on that step, the reality starts to create tension in your life to basically get you up off of your butt and to get up and go and move. You see, when you start to become stagnant, the reality, the simulated world, simulates something to create some type of tension, some type of, obstacle for you, so that you have to actually grow. It's like forcing you to grow. They're growing pains. You're going through the growing pains of life. This is why at certain stages it can be really rough. Like being a human.
So pretty much like what he's really trying to get at is like you can't run away from life. Like even like on a spiritual, mental, and physical level, like if you go try to like hide in your room all day, like you're gonna be living with people. There's gonna be something that comes up. The reality will push for something if you don't get up and move. It's a pretty much within and without thing. Like there needs to be that like momentum to push you towards something so you can actually start raising up in your stages of consciousness. And a lot of the times, like people, they'll move along, they'll start seeing certain things in the reality will be showing them signs, but then they become too fearful, they become too scared maybe. And this is why we need to like really be in the present moment and see like, okay, right now what can I do to actually better myself and get on that next stage to where I need to be. Because a lot of people, like especially spiritually, like they set no spiritual goals. They don't set any spiritual thing for them to do within their day, so they're wondering why they're not connected to spirit. They're wondering why all this stuff in their reality is going bad, why their ego is lashing out all the time. These are things you have to become aware of, and that's how you're gonna pretty much move along the stages of reality and consciousness. So yeah, we're let's keep moving along.
And then going through the stage of, being like a child to a teenager, and you go through puberty and all that type of stuff, that's a rough time for everybody, and then going from, probably being in your 50s and 60s into that elderly stage, it's probably a rough time. You're like, man, I'm getting old. I'm getting old. My skin's starting to wrinkle up. I'm starting to look different. My back's hurting and everything. Like, the reality is forcing you onto a new perception. But it's up to you to accept the new perception, but then also to be opened up to the next stage. Because the stages are endless as you're here. I mean,
what did he just say again?
He said, pretty much the stages are endless, and just like how once you move on from one stage, like you're almost like moving on to like the next stage and like accepting that.
Oh, okay, yeah, the accepting part. That's the thing that I want to talk about is basically as you grow and stuff, you have to be willing to accept, like how Astro's saying, you have to be willing to accept these changes in your life. And some people may be in your reality that, there may be certain things that happen in your reality that cause certain tension to help you grow. And it's for a good reason, because some people, they don't want help. And if you want help, you got to be open to receive that help, because most people, when it comes to the spirituality and stuff, most people, they close themselves off. They don't want to hear the criticism. They don't want to hear the things that make them uncomfortable and stuff like that, because everyone's so comfortable with, you know, not moving along their stage of consciousness. They're more acceptable and basically more willing to, you know, stay in the lower consciousness because they feel that it's, you know, that's where they should be, but it's not where you should be. You know, life in reality shows you that we need to grow on all fronts, spiritually, mentally, and physically. First spirit, then the mind, then the body. If your spirit's not growing, then mentally you won't be growing. If you're not mentally growing, then physically you probably won't be growing. You'll probably become, most likely you are going to be stagnant, but that's why you need to make sure that you let people help you if you need that help. Yeah, it may suck because, you know, people, I've seen this happen too, where, you know, you may say something to somebody and they may not like what you're saying because it's making them uncomfortable in a state that is getting them to, you know, shake things up and everything like that. So I just wanted to make that point, is like, you got to be willing to accept that criticism as well, because that will help you along your stages of consciousness. And basically, let's keep moving on.
I have something about the acceptance. Yeah, so the acceptance, like, you can't start growing until you accept that you're in this reality. Like, people call it like a prison planet, and they're like, oh, I need to escape reality, I need to run away from reality, but it's like, that's not how, like, you raise in your stages of consciousness. Like, trying to be like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I'm not open to this new experience, I'm kind of scared. That's your mind. Like, once you're in, like, spirit, you're going to be in the present moment, because you know in the present moment that's where you're not thinking too much, you're not overanalyzing things, your anxiety is going away, you're seeing things and accepting the reality now. So now you're going to be making, like, way better choices than if you were just in your mind. Someone might come up to you and, like, ask you something, and if you're in the present moment, if you're in tune with spirit, you've accepted the reality for how it is, and you're actually living like you're in the simulation, you're going to start having these things come to you within the present moment. You're going to be like, wow, like, how did I even get that idea? And then you go and make a video on it, and that video gets just a lot of views, and you're like, thank you, spirit. Like, that's what happens when you're in the present moment. So let's keep the video going, stay in the present moment, and keep turning up.
And moving along the stages.
You gotta say that every time.
Yep.
Let's move along the stages of consciousness.
Moving along.
You can reach a certain stage, and when you reach that stage, it doesn't mean the growth stops, but you have the highest understanding that you can, you know, in this physical realm, in this 3D realm. You have the highest understanding. Of course, there's other understandings that go outside of this realm, but that's a whole nother story. But you have to be willing to pretty much keep moving forward, to not stop on your basic spiritual stuff and think, well, this is it. You know, I learned about meditation and crystals and chakras, and, you know, that's all there is to it. It's like, no, it goes a lot deeper, you know, and at some point, the reality is going to make you face your fears, because a lot of people, they fear certain parts of these stages of consciousness they have to go through, so they avoid it. They don't actually push themselves to grow. And then guess what? The reality is pushing back at you. It's like, hey, wake up. It's trying to get you to break past that obstacle, but you just won't do it. You see, you have to believe in yourself and understand that you are a spiritual being. At least the people that are spiritual that are watching this, you know, who knows if they got some simulated beings out there watching this or something. I don't know. But basically, you have to push yourself if you want to evolve as a spiritual being. As a human, it's going to just push you right along and give you these different experiences, which should help you, you know, push yourself on a spiritual level. As you're getting closer to death on a physical level, because everybody dies physically at some point, as you get closer to that, it's like the simulation is trying to help you break into these higher stages of consciousness. So some people, they think you're living in this prison planet, and, you know, they got you taken hostage and all this type of stuff. You know, it can be that way when you're in that underworld perception, but as you start to rise up in consciousness, as you start to rise up in your awareness and you tune into your higher self, you realize they can't trap me. They can't take me down. The only person that can trap me and take me down is myself. You see, that's how powerful your spirit is. So I'm going to pretty much leave it at that. I want to thank you all for watching. Peace in and out with love, my highest vibrations, and always
Yeah, that's pretty much the video. We picked this video especially for right now because it is fall time. Well, in America at least. Fall is coming, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have already felt the energy, and right now is definitely the time to keep like your spiritual fire going, keep turning up, and like check yourself. You're gonna have to check your ego, because that's how you actually keep moving along. That's how you keep having your Trinity emotion, by taming your ego and actually being like, okay, what do I need to do today? Let me set it and let me do it so I can get it done and keep having my momentum build in a positive way.
So that way you don't fall and you rise up, and you get to move along the stages of consciousness. You want to move into the upper world stages of consciousness, not the lower stages of consciousness, because that's where mostly everyone, unfortunately, is residing at. Like, we need more people in the upper world, people that are expressing more of these higher vibrations and stuff. And it does take time, but that's why we have each other, so that way we can have, because I know earlier, there may be some bad times, but also we'll be there, for the good times as well. Because it's just not bad in this world. There's also good, and there's, good things happening as well. And there's a lot of good stuff happening at here at RTM. So if you're ever interested in joining people that are like-minded, and if you actually want to open up, and if you want to see what, it's like to actually connect with people that are like-minded, definitely come check us out at reprogramthematrix.com, because there's a lot of great, awesome stuff. There's, even all weird stuff. I'm not going to get all into it right now. There's a lot of cool stuff. And, we're really excited, and hope that you guys are excited, and hope to see you in the coming videos in the future.
So that's it. Gratitude for watching, guys. Peace in. Peace out.